I think that's what it can be like following Jesus, especially when it comes to this counterintuitive wisdom. That he's like, there's a part of you that's always going to be drawing you to be self-centered. But I'm telling you, let go of that. Say no to that. Trust me, follow this other way of sacrificial love. And as you do, you're going to look back and go, man, that Jesus, he knows a thing or two.
Follow me.
Hey everybody, my name's Pete, and I want to begin today with a question, a pretty big, kind of deep question. But how do you know, or how do you decide where life is? How do you know, how do you decide, how do you decide like who to follow, what to follow when it comes to like finding joy and peace and life satisfaction? Like where does that come from? I think that we're making these decisions all the time and we may not even really realize it. Like this happens to me all the time, maybe it happens to you. You'll be at someone's house, like your friend's house or some relative's house, and they just got like a new thing. And they're so excited about the new thing. Like somebody just got a new kitchen put in and it's all they can talk about because for them, where life is to be found, where satisfaction is to be found, is in the new kitchen. But for you, you're kind of like, I could really care less about the kitchen. Like you make the same food no matter which kitchen you're in, so it doesn't really matter. But you just feign interest. So you're like, ooh, granite. Very, very nice, very, very solid. Like, have you ever felt this? Like what, you know what's happening in that moment is for them, they're like, do you see how I found joy in this kitchen? But for you, you're making a judgment. You're deciding, yeah, I don't think that's where life is. I don't think that's where the life is to be found. This happens all the time. Like maybe you know somebody and they just got a new car and they're all about the new car and they want to show you the new car. You got to sit in the new car, you got to ride in the new car, and you're kind of like, yeah, your car, it goes the same places that my car goes. Like they're kind of just about the same. And so for them, they're like, I found life in the car. And you're like, I don't really think that that's where life is to be found. We're making these decisions all the time when we have interactions with other people. And we're also making the decisions about our own choices all the time too. We make decisions that like, I'm gonna follow this way. I'm gonna do things this way. I'm gonna seek after this thing. And once I get this thing, then I'll finally have the joy that I'm looking for. I'll finally have the life that I'm looking for. And then we get that thing and it leaves us empty. And we're like, oh, I should have known it wasn't gonna be that way. I got an email just last night from Sport Check. The title of the email was, we have what you're looking for. And immediately I'm like, what a funny title that they would send that. Like, of course, Sport Check does not have ultimately what I'm looking for. The life is not gonna be found there. We're always making these decisions. Where can I find life? Today, you're joining us for the end of our series called Follow Me, where we're looking at passages and stories where Jesus invites people and says, follow me. And when he does this is what he's doing. This is what he's saying. He's saying, trust me. I know the way to what you're looking for. I know the way to the life that you're looking for. Follow me, I'll show you how to find it. And today we're gonna look at a really heavy passage where Jesus says these words, follow me. And it's gonna feel a little bit heavy. And it's maybe even more intense, I would say, than the passage I preached on a few weeks ago where Jesus says, let the dead bury their own dead. It's even more intense than that. So buckle up. We're gonna look at Jesus and he says these words once again in this passage. We're gonna go to Mark chapter 8. And I just wanna look at the first few words that he says in this part of the passage. He says, if anyone wants to become my follower, if anyone, this right off the bat should kind of like clue us that Jesus is about to say something pretty heavy. Because he's like, hey, if anybody wants to follow me, which kind of implies, I know that like you in order to follow what I'm about to say, in order to be ready for it, you have to want to be my follower. Like you wouldn't just like come in off the street and I'd be like, hey, here's what it means to follow me. He's speaking to people that have seen him work miracles. He's speaking to people that have seen him display his power over the spiritual realm. He's called out demons from people. He showed his power over nature. He's calmed the storms. He's healed people. He's even brought a little girl back from the dead at this part in Mark's gospel. He's also been teaching, and he's also been displaying grace to people. And so you imagine all these people are collected around, and they think that they want to follow Jesus because they've seen something that he's done. They've seen him feed 5,000 people, and they're like, yeah, we're on board. Like, we want to follow you. And it's like one day Jesus said, if you guys really want to follow me, I gotta tell you something about what that's gonna look like, what that's gonna mean, and it's gonna be different than everything that you've experienced in following me so far. If anyone really wants to become my follower, and then he says this, if anyone wants to become my follower, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Now, right away, my apologies that it's himself and his. Of course, Jesus is speaking to male and female, but in the translation, this is the words that he's actually saying. And so you're gonna have to do that little translation for yourself this morning. But I want you to notice right away that in this little statement, Mark is doing something that he does over and over in his writing. And what Mark likes to do is he likes to create sandwiches. He likes to create sandwiches where he takes an idea or a story, and then he puts another story in the middle of it. Or he takes a phrase or a word and he bookends a passage or just even a couple of lines or even like a bigger section with the same thing. And it's a way of like putting like blinking lights on something. It's a way of saying like this section goes together, and the part that you find at the middle is often like the most important part, the part that he wants you to really clue in on. And so when we look at this passage, I kind of framed it this way for us so you'd see it really obviously. He's saying, if anyone wants to become my follower, do these two things and follow me. And so you see how he's like framed, he's bookended. He's like, follower, you want to follow me? You want to be one of my disciples? You want to learn how to live from me? Like, let me put these blinking bright lights on it so that you see it. And then you're like, okay, I guess what it means to follow and be a follower is probably whatever these two lines mean. That's how Mark tips us off to this, not having like a highlighter or bold or underline that he can use in his writing. And so this is what he says. He must deny himself and take up his cross. What does this mean? What does it mean to deny yourself? I think that what he's cluing in on here is all of our natural predisposition to be self-centered. They're like, from the moment that we come out of the womb, we're crying and it's all about us. And as we grow up, it's easy to just think about ourselves first. I gotta take care of me. I gotta make sure that I'm comfortable. I gotta make sure that my reputation's a certain way. I gotta care about what other people think about me. There's kind of this natural predisposition, this like default posture of the human heart to look out for me, to care about me first. And what Jesus is saying is that if you wanna follow me, what you gotta do is you gotta deny that. You gotta say no to that natural default. You gotta say, no, I'm not gonna make it all about me. I'm gonna turn outward. And so I'm gonna say no to myself, and then what am I gonna say yes to? I'm gonna say yes to taking up my cross. And what does this mean, taking up my cross? Well, we know that the Romans used the cross as an execution device, as a horrible execution device. And that this is how Jesus himself would die. And so when Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me, I think it's supposed to give us the image that like we're carrying a cross as we follow Jesus, who is also carrying a cross. Jesus is carrying a cross and we're carrying a cross. And so whatever it means for us to take up our cross, it's probably similar to what it means for him to take up his cross. Not the exact same, but very similar. And so let me give you 4 ways that it's similar and what I think this line is supposed to bring up in our imaginations as we imagine, okay, what does this mean? What does this symbolic imagery of picking up my cross mean? Number 1, it means to embrace the rejection that comes with the cross. Why is Jesus executed? He's executed because the religious people at the time team up with the empire at the time, and they decide, what's the most powerful way that we could reject this Jesus guy? Let's put him up on a cross. And so to pick up a cross ourselves is to understand and to embrace that what it means to follow Jesus will put us at odds with the powers that be in the world. And we will have to face the rejection that brings. Point number 1, rejection. Point number 2, it is to submit to the will of the Father. Jesus, in going to the cross, is submitting to the will of his Father, saying like, Father, this is what you want for me, so I'm gonna do this for you. And so when we pick up our cross, we're making the same thing. Father, not my will be done, but your will be done. It's to embrace rejection. It's to submit to the will of the Father. It's to decide to make our lives a display of sacrificial love. This is what Jesus does as he's on the cross. What's he doing? He's absorbing the sins of the world into himself. He's dying for my sins. He's dying for your sins. And he's doing that because he loves us so much. And so in doing that, he is embodying, he is displaying, he is revealing sacrificial love, the sacrificial love that reveals to us the heart of the Father. And so for us to pick up our cross is to say, I want to be the same embodiment. I want my life to embody this sacrificial love. And number 4, what it means to take up your cross is to symbolically kill that old self that was just always thinking about me. That default posture of like, life is all about me. I'm just going to make it about me. I'm just going to build up as big of a reputation as I can for me. I'm going to build up as much wealth as I can for me. That whole way that I used to live before I met Jesus, I want it to die. I used to think that was the way. But now that I've met Jesus, I've seen another way, and it's so much more beautiful. And so in comparison, I want that old way to die. And so I'm gonna pick up this cross and I'm gonna bring that old body to the cross and crucify that old me on the cross so I can live this new life. So that's what it means. And I kind of summarize it this way for you if you're taking notes. It's saying no to selfishness, and it's saying yes to sacrificial love. Saying no to selfishness and saying yes to sacrificial love. Now that's a whole lot of flowery language maybe. Maybe you're not good with like metaphors and images. So let me give you like some real like handles for this. Whenever I think about this idea, I think of how I experienced this most recently in the last several years of my life. And that is being married and having little kids. And being married and having little kids means that every morning those little kids wake up way sooner than you want to wake up. And every morning I would have this verse kind of play in my mind as my kids began to yell from their bedrooms, what does it mean? What does it mean to follow me? Deny yourself, pick up your cross. Deny yourself, pick up your cross. And I hear, Daddy, Mommy, I had a bad dream. I'm ready to wake up. The sun's out. Like if the sun's up, you know sun's up. I mean, kids are up, right? And laying in bed. And what do you do if you've experienced this? What do you do if you're laying in bed? You stay perfectly still. And you just open one eye. You're like, are they gonna move? Are they getting up? Hopefully they'll get up. Maybe they're gonna get up. Come on, kid, cry out again, but don't say daddy, say mommy. Come on. And then they don't get up and you just hear this like, what does it mean? What does it mean, take up my cross, embody sacrificial love? And eventually, maybe you make the choice. You're like, okay, I'm gonna love my wife. I'm gonna get out of bed. And now you've still got more choices to make though, about what it means to really embody this sacrificial love. Because you can get out of bed all kinds of different ways when you're getting up with the kids. You can get up kind of like quick. You can throw the sheets onto the other side, throw them onto the other person. You can turn the lights on. You can leave the door open as if to say, hey, I'm getting up, but you're close behind me, right? You're coming with me, right? Or you can get to that door quietly in the dark, and you slowly close the door. You make sure that it doesn't even click, like the little thing that sticks out. You make sure it doesn't even click. And then you close the door gently. And then you bless the door. You're like, oh, bless you, man. I hope you have the most beautiful sleep. Or you a little prayer for them. And then you go off and you take care of the kids. This is really maybe a funny example, but it's really tangible that if you're married, this kind of idea probably plays through your head all the time. It's either I could choose what I want to do, or I could choose to embody sacrificial love to the person that I'm married to. Same thing happens with your kids. You get home and you're exhausted and you're like, I don't have enough energy to give to these kids, and they just want to wrestle on the floor, and you're like, I just want to sit on the couch on my phone. I just need like a little me time. And the kids are dragging you on the floor, and to put down the phone and to get on the floor with the kids, this is what it means to take up your cross, to embody sacrificial love. It's not going to be about me. I'm going to say no to me. I'm going to say yes to them. It's the same way in your friendships. Are you going to be a person who's looking to give to people in your friendships? Or are you going to be a person that's always taking in your friendships? It's the same thing in your community, in the church, in your neighborhood. Am I a person that's looking to serve in these places? To make it like I want to serve, I want to embody sacrificial love in these places where I find myself? Or am I there for what they can give to me? Am I a giver or a taker? This is the kind of thing you think about all the time. This is the kind of thing that the people who we saw baptized earlier this morning embodied for us. What is baptism a symbol of? It's a symbol of a death and a resurrection. As people go under the water, they're saying, I want to die to the old me. I want to die to the selfish me. I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to be the person that Jesus sees in me, the way I want to be like Jesus. And so I want to die to that old me, and I want to be resurrected to this new way of life. It's a beautiful symbol of what it means to take up your cross and follow Jesus. And the best part is that this actually leads us to a new life. Like a new life emerges from this. And this is what Jesus says in this passage in the next lines. So if you're following along, you'll see these. This is what he says. He says, for whoever wants to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life because of me and because of the gospel will save it. You see this? He's like whoever wants to save their life, whoever is worried about their life, who's trying to like keep their life for themselves, whoever's trying to do that is actually going to end up losing it. And yet the people who say I want to lose my life for this message about King Jesus and the gospel of his kingdom, they'll actually find life. Jesus is like, there's people that are trying to like keep life and keep it all about themselves, and they're actually on this slow fading journey towards death. This vortex of becoming a shadow of who they were created to be. And then there's other people who are leaning into the way of Jesus, who are clinging to his message about who he says they are and what it means to live in his kingdom. And those people, while a part of them is fading away, like they're losing part of who they used to be, a new part of them is emerging. They're coming to be fully awake. Then he says this, for what benefit is it for a person to gain the whole world, yet forfeit his life? What can a person give in exchange for his life? He's like, you could live a certain way that's all about you, and you might gain the whole world. But at the end of it, you can't like trade all of that to get your life back. You can't trade all of that to get you back. Like if you become this me monster, like that was just all about me, like at the end of it all, you can't just flick a switch and change everything and get your life back, the life that Jesus wanted you to have of sacrificial love. So don't live that way. And this truth is difficult for us because it's counterintuitive. It's counterintuitive, and the only way that we can really grasp and understand and experience counterintuitive truth or counterintuitive wisdom is that we have to try it. We have to try it. I experience this with my kids all the time. I'm always trying to give them wisdom. I'm always trying to teach them how to live, and they're always doubting me. They're always like, I don't know, Dad. I was trying to teach them how to ride their bike the other day, and I'm like, you gotta go faster. Like they're going slow because they're afraid of falling. And they're thinking, the slower I go, the safer I am. And I'm like, no, it's the opposite of that. The faster you go, the easier it is you're gonna be able to balance. And I'm like fighting with them, and they're like, no, Dad, that can't be that way. I'm like, just try it. And I'm running along beside them as fast as I can, bring this bike. And once they get up to speed, then I let go. And then they're like, I'm doing it. And they look back at me and they're like, maybe that old guy knows a thing or two. Happens all the time with like food. I'm like, you're gonna love this food, and they don't like the way it looks, so they don't want to eat it, but then they try it, they're like, that was delicious. And they look at me like, maybe this guy knows a thing or two. They're fighting like with their younger sister over a toy, and I'm like, listen, just ignore that toy, go play with this toy, then she's gonna want that toy, then you can go back and get that toy. And they're like, no, that's not gonna work. Like, I want that toy and I want it right now. I'm like, just give it like 2 minutes, play with that toy, she's gonna be over there. They're like, okay, I'm gonna try it. They do it, works perfectly. Sister goes over to that toy, they get the toy that they wanted. They look at me like, man, this guy, he seems to know a thing or two. I think that's what it can be like following Jesus, especially when it comes to this counterintuitive wisdom. That he's like, there's a part of you that's always gonna be drawing you to be self-centered. But I'm telling you, let go of that, say no to that. Trust me, follow this other way of sacrificial love. And as you do, you're gonna look back and go, man, that Jesus, he knows a thing or two. I found this in my own life. I found it in the lives of people that I've observed that the marriages that are the healthiest, where the people really seem to love each other, is where they're embodying this, where they're constantly laying down their lives for one another. They're constantly serving one another. I found it in those moments when I think that what I want is to sit on the couch on my phone, and my kids are pulling me onto the floor, and I finally put the phone down and I get onto the floor. You know what I find? I find that there was life down on the floor. Like I thought, no, the life that I need is on the couch with my phone. That's the life I need. I need a break right now. And yet I put that away and I embrace this sacrificial love, and I find there was a life like hiding down there on the floor with my kids. Science and research keeps pointing us in the same direction, finding that the happiest people, that the healthiest, physically healthiest people, are the people that serve, the people that volunteer, the people that sacrifice. One theologian that I heard a number of years ago at a conference said it this way. His name's Walter Brueggemann. And he said it so beautifully, and I don't even think it was written down anywhere. It just like spilled out of him. And I'll never forget him saying this. He said this: God gives God's self with the mandate, give yourself away. Give yourself away. Give your body, give your blood, give your future, give your life. Give yourself away. Give yourself away. And what you'll find is that you get yourself back enhanced. Isn't that a great line? Give yourself away. And what you'll find is that you get yourself back enhanced. I think this is what Jesus is trying to get through our heads. Trust me. Follow me. Give yourself away the way that you're going to see me give myself away. And you'll discover that you actually get your life back enhanced. Now, one last part for us this morning. And I'm going to warn you, this has been heavy already. It's about to get a little bit heavier. But I got to read the last thing that Jesus says in this passage, and it'll make sense to you why I got to read it, because Jesus basically says, you better read this. He says, for if anyone is ashamed of me and my words, see why I got to read it? Because he's like, I couldn't like not do this verse, and then anybody reading their Bible will be like, seems like Pete was ashamed of that verse, so he avoided that verse. Anyways, for if anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will also be ashamed of him when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. Now, the reason why I warned you is because we don't usually like talking about Jesus like this. And yet these are Jesus' words. What's he saying here? He's saying anybody who's ashamed of this idea that the cross is beautiful, that sacrificial love is beautiful, anybody who's ashamed of my teachings, of my way, and instead teams up with an adulterous generation, meaning like a whole generation that is turned away from God, that is cheating on God and is full of sin. So you say no to Jesus. I'm ashamed of Jesus and his way, but I'm going to team up with this whole generation over here. You know what? Jesus wants to let you know that when I come back, I'm going to be ashamed of him. Why does Jesus talk like that? I think he just talks like this to give us a sober reminder that Jesus is coming back, that Jesus is watching us live our lives, and that there's a possibility that when he comes back, that he's going to look at your life and he's going to say, that looks nothing like me. Like, how long were you in church for? How many sermons did you hear? And that's how you chose to live? That looks nothing like me. That looks nothing like denying yourself and picking up your cross. How did that happen? Like, he would be ashamed of that. Versus other passages that we get where Jesus says to his servants, like, well done, my good and faithful servant. This is such a sobering reminder, like Jesus is going to come back and he's going to look at your life. And we want him to say like, that looks like me. I see how every day you chose my way of sacrificial love. Well done, my good and faithful servant. But that's heavy, right? That's heavy, like to carry the weight of that, like Jesus is coming back and I hope that I'm doing a good enough job. And it makes me feel like do I got to just flick a switch and now be cross-bearing all the time? I mean, that's heavy. And so let me show you something that Mark does that I think relieves some of this weight. Mark is a genius in the way that he's structured his gospel. And one of the things that he does, like I said before, is he creates these sandwiches or these bookends to kind of highlight sections for us. And he does this in a section that's known as the way narrative. And it begins at Mark chapter 8, verse 22, and it ends at the end of Mark chapter 10. Now, what's significant in this section is that 3 times in this section, Jesus, for the first time, tells his disciples that he's going to die. He tells his disciples, like, I know you guys know we're on our way to Jerusalem. Well, what's going to happen there is that I'm going to die. And each time that he tells them this, it's met with rebuke or rejection or a changing of the topic or just like confusion. But also in this section, it is bookended, these 2 sections, with Jesus healing a blind person. And so at the beginning, there's a healing of a blind guy, and at the end, there's a healing of a blind guy. And what's really significant is that this first healing of a blind guy is a strange healing. It's the only one like it that we read about in the Gospels. And it's strange because it takes Jesus 2 tries to get the guy healed. Like the first time that he heals him, he tries to heal him, however you want to word that, the guy can't like see perfectly. And so Jesus asks him, like, can you see? And the guy's like, I can't really see. I just see like people look like trees, which is weird. You're like, what is Jesus tired? Jesus didn't like have enough juice. He oh, sorry, I only gave you like a level 5 dose. I should have gave you a 10. Like what is this? And then Jesus goes to heal him again. And then finally the guy can see. And what's happening here is that I think Mark is preparing us for something. He's preparing us for this, that as we follow Jesus, that coming to see his way, to see the truth of who he is and what it means to follow him, coming to see that clearly is a gradual process. It doesn't all just happen at once. And so before Jesus reveals what it ultimately means to follow him, that it means deny yourself and pick up your cross, before Jesus reveals 3 times that he's going to Jerusalem to die, before any of that happens, Mark tips us off with this story saying like, what you're about to read is gonna take you some time to fully see. And why do I say that relieves some of the pressure? It relieves some of the pressure off of us because it means we don't have to flick a switch and get it all perfect tomorrow. As Luke says it, when Luke picks up this idea of denying yourself and taking up your cross, he says daily. He adds the word daily. I like that because it's kind of a reminder that like even if you messed up yesterday, that today when you wake up, you can decide, okay, today, I know I put the cross down yesterday. It was too heavy. I couldn't do it. But today I'm going to pick it up again and I want to follow Jesus. The way that he's worded and framed this section for us, I think is a reminder that it's a gradual process of coming to see Jesus, and that the most important thing is that we just stay on the journey. That every day we decide like, well, I wandered away, but today I'm back on the journey. And as I follow Jesus, I'm coming to see him a bit more clearly, and I'm staying a little bit closer to him. And so maybe today what Jesus wants to say to you is, when are you going to be done looking for life in all the wrong places? All the places that have left you empty, all the places that you already know lead to a dead end. When are you going to trust him enough that he knows what's best for you? You're looking for life? Give yourself away. Embrace radical sacrificial love. Give yourself away to your spouse. Give yourself away to your kids, to your friends, to your neighbors. Give yourself away to the church. And what you'll find is that you get yourself back enhanced. And even if it doesn't all make sense, even if you can't see it perfectly clearly right now, trust Jesus enough that as you follow him, day by day, the road will only get clearer and clearer. Let me pray for you. God, would you show us the places where we need to embrace the way of the cross, the way of your sacrificial love? Would you empower us to live it out? God, when we see the places where we're acting selfishly, would you give us the power to say no to that and to say yes to your love? And may we be reminded that as we stumble and fumble and trip and mess up along the way, that your grace is always there, is always inviting us to continue on down the road. Jesus, would you become more and more clear to each one of us, more and more beautiful to each one of us. And may we desire to be your followers more and more each day. In your name we pray these things. Amen.